let's start chatting about hip extension. So we touched on this briefly in class, but having the whole of the model here is actually really helpful. So we talked about how hip extension is actually the moving of the thigh bone, hello pickle, backwards in the hip joint. So if you look at Bendy here in profile, this is his pelvis. The little hole there is the acetabulum, if you remember that. Then we have the head of the femur, so we have this little ball here which sits in the socket, and hip extension, which is the sagittal plane, is backwards. Now, you haven't got much range in here. If my memory serves me right, it's something like 10-15 degrees, so it's not much at all. But we also talked about how this relationship changed. So, if you remember rightly, we took one finger on the front of the pelvis, so this little knobbly bit just here, boom, and then we put one hand on our femur, so just here. And then what we did, when we extended our leg back, we felt these 2 points separate. So the space between these two fingers increases as the pelvis and the thigh bone move away from each other. Likewise, when we flex the hip, those two fingers come together. So essentially, there and there, when we flex it, you can see, whoops, that the two come closer together. As opposed to when it goes back, the two fingers come further apart. So, why is this important for yoga? Don't know if you remember that we said we could extend the hip by moving the leg back, or while we're standing here, if we just tilt our pelvis under, we do the same thing. We open up those 2 points as we call this a posterior tilt of the pelvis. So, why this is important? If I come back into a lunge position, so let's call it, I don't know, we'll come into a warrior style position. Me bastardize the thing up, but you get the drift. Now, from here, if my pelvis is tucked under, boom, I've separated these 2 parts and got hip extension. What you'll see some people do is they stick their bottom back, which means they don't have to stretch in here, but then they'll extend their back. And you can see how all the tissues on my lower back are starting to compress down, this way. So, the key is to watch out for those people who can't extend their hips, so then the pelvis has to go with it, so it tilts that way, and then in order for them to look like they're standing up straight, bump, they crank their back as well. So, that's a little top tip with hip extension.